you want to evaluate an expression like we see here, to evaluate expression, replace the variable with the given number. A variable, of course, is a letter that you see there. As you see, it could be any letter here, X, Y, U, P, it could be any of those. So all we need to do is replace the X with negative 23. So this means we're going to do absolute value negative 23. Well, absolute values will always give you a positive number. So you're just going to write the positive version of what you see inside there, and that's it. For the next one, we have a negative in there already, but we're putting in a negative. So now I have a negative and a negative. Well, anytime you have two negatives together, that's going to turn into a positive. So this is absolute value of positive 2, which means that's going to give you a 2. This has a negative outside of the absolute value. Now, this time the negative is not going to go away. If you have a negative outside, that means the 13 only replaces the u, but we still have a negative out front. So we have, this is the same thing as a negative 1 times the absolute value of 13. That's what that means when you have a negative out front like that. Negative 1 times the absolute value. Okay. So this is going to get, let me make this look a little clearer and make these look like ones so as to not confuse it with the absolute value symbol bars like we have that. Okay. So it's negative 1 times the absolute value of 13. Well, that's going to give you negative 1 times 13, and that means you get negative 13 for the answer. Okay, so negative 1 times the absolute value does turn into a positive 13. It's only a negative because we have a negative sign outside of the absolute value. All right, now let's do one more. Okay, for this we have negative p when p is equal to negative 19. All right, so I have negative, and then I have inside, I have negative 9. Now, the two negatives are not going to cancel out here, okay? You have to do what's inside of here first. So, remember, as I mentioned before, negative 1 times the absolute value of negative 9. So I have negative 1 here, but I'm multiplying it by the absolute value of negative 9, which is positive 9. So we get negative 9 as the answer. So be really careful with these because even though it may look like you can just cancel the negatives out and make it positive, that's not the case here because these are absolute values, not parentheses. And so that's why it works the way it does there. So that's why we get negative 9 as the answer.